Okay, so I know we've talked about introductions and conclusions briefly in class, but I wanted to put this up on Perusall so that you can have it and look at it more closely. And also, so if you've got an idea or a question, something you might want to try out or you're not real sure about and you don't want to wait until you get the whole essay done, you can, hit the comment button on the video and ask a question or make a comment and keep going, and then I will respond back to you. So it's a good way to sort of try out stuff without having to wait until you get the whole essay done. So just briefly, I'm not going to read all of this, but briefly it's an introduction. For me, a good introduction is all about letting us know what the tone is. Is this going to be funny? Is it going to be serious? It's sort of getting us into the world, and it hooks me. I have a very short attention span, which you probably figured out already. I want to know in the first 5 seconds if this is something I want to keep reading, or if I'm going to have to, get a really big cup of tea to get through it. So, it wants what we call hooking the reader. We'll do more of this when we get to Unit 2, when we do articles, but it's about bringing us in. If you watch the first 30 seconds of the show, or the first cutscene in a video game, or the first couple of pages of a comic or graphic novel or manga, whether you want to keep going or not. It's the same idea with this. It's to get us to keep reading. So how do we do that? Well, the best way to do it with something particularly like this, portrait of a word, is that scene that we did in class, take that scene and sort of tweak it and make it the first part of your essay. Right, because it brings us into the world. It tells us a little bit about the words or the phrases, and it really hooks us because it creates a question in our minds. You don't have to. You can ask a question. Have you ever thought about blah, or make a surprising statement. You never thought about this because you're whatever. You're not from this country. But also by showing us the scene, it's creating a question because we want to know more about the world that this scene takes place in. So those are great ways to start essays. You don't want to go on forever because, like she says, you want to get to the heart of it pretty quickly. But it's a really good setup, and it's really a good way to hook a reader. So some things don't say in this essay I will. Don't do that for this one. Don't do that for anyone. Nothing will make an instructor's eyes roll back in their heads than somebody who starts an essay going with, in this paper I will, and ending an essay with, in conclusion. Those are like the big, most horrible things in the world. So don't do that, right? Don't put the dictionary definition to begin something. I think you probably did that in high school. It's a good way to kind of learn about the words and the ideas. But, we're in a different world, so don't do that. And don't repeat the assignment. Okay. Now, this little diagram, I don't know how many of you are into martinis, but it's also a funnel. This is the way an essay is really written. Is the intro takes up a big chunk because it grabs your attention. Excuse me, my allergies are kicking in. All right, so you want to get us into the world, and then we want to know what this is really going to be about by the time you get to the main point. By the time you finish your intro, you can tell a story, show us a scene, and say, "This is what happens in my discourse community, and this is how language works to do this." And then you kind of go from there, right? So you're setting up something, and now you're going to explain it a little bit more. By the time we get to the conclusion, you've really kind of showed us how the word works, or the phrases work, how people in your discourse community communicate with each other, all those things that we talk about in class. By the time we get to the conclusion, it's not like you're trying to prove a point. You're just trying to show us something. You're trying to show us the world. Show us how language works, show us the people that you communicate with, right? So it kind of opens out. So we should know more when we end about your discourse community than we started. And that's why the martini glass works pretty well as a model. Right, so conclusion tips. A great way to end something, if you start with a story, is to refer back to, start with a scene or a story, is to refer back to that scene or story at the end. You're going to find when we get to Unit 2 that a lot of feature writers, because you're going to be writing a feature article, a lot of feature writers do this. It's a circular way of writing. We're taught it in journalism school. It's pretty standard, but it works. So it's kind of nice to start with. If you brought us into some scene in your community, and you kind of bring us back there at the end. That's a nice way to wrap it up. Or you can make just a general comment about language in your community. Don't say, you have to go out and change the world, but you can do that. You can use a call to action at the end and say, well, you know more about this now. Now's the time to go out and get more involved with this community or communities like this, right? There's some other things to do that won't apply here, like, suggesting further research, whatever. But she put it in here just to have it. Here are the don'ts. Don't start with in conclusion or in summary. It just doesn't work. I mean, leave that back in high school. Don't give new evidence. Don't introduce a new discourse community. Don't take us off in a different direction. Stay with what you got. Right? Don't restate. If you came up with main points, which I hope, like heck, you didn't, like a 5-paragraph essay, don't restate them. You're not restating your essay here. You're leaving us with something new. You say, this is the world. This is the world, and this is what I want you to take from this, right? You want to help your readers see your community in a different way, and the language of that community in a different way. And that's all your conclusion is after, is just to remind us, that this is what you're doing. And then, again, whoops, sorry about that. By the way, that was wrong. So back to the martini glass, you're bringing us from the wide world into your discourse community, talking about the discourse community, and then, sort of making sure that we know something now that we didn't know before, right? So we're going back out into the world. And remember, this is just an overview, right? We do more of this as we go along. But, again, it's here to make comments, to leave me messages, questions, try out stuff. So there we go.